And this was a program where, in the process of purchasing silent submarines, the money was weaved through a group of offshore corporations. So you know that this person is guilty, because why would he do such a thing?
Are you talking about Greece right now?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Let me raise this point to you. This is out of the Washington Post, saying what you just said. Amid Euro slump, the IMF rethinks austerity. And you had said 8-9 months ago, whenever that Dominique Strauss-Kahn thing happened, that it was a setup, that it was run by Sarkozy. That later came out. And that Kahn didn't want to squeeze as hard, not because he's a nice guy, but he's saying we're going to kill the golden goose. You can't impoverish them this fast. And so they basically removed him because he was set to also be able to beat Sarkozy coming up in the election. Now the person that you're friends with, Le Pen's doing good. But the point here is that the bankers are realizing that they are killing the golden goose, and they're now admitting this.
And they have no solution for the debt. Now they get Spain on their hands. You're talking a minimum of $1.5 trillion. And it could be as high as $2.5 trillion. If you put them all together, you get $6 trillion. And there's no way they can come up with it without destroying their financial base. And so we continue to see this avoidance of responsibility as to what they're going to or trying to do. And so all of that is in the pot, so to speak. And there are no solutions. So this is one of the reasons why gold and silver are being held down, because they would want them going up 200 or 300 points in the face of this terrible predicament that exists in Europe, which could very well lead to the demise over the next couple of years of the Eurozone.
That unraveling, what do you expect gold to do when that unraveling accelerates? Because I know it always takes longer, but you're saying 1 or 2 years. A lot of experts are saying 6 months or so.
There's no telling. But I think this year it would be safe to say that gold could test 2,000, 2,200.
Bob, what else is on your radar screen right now?
Well, I think that last item is very important. I hope that the listening audience pursues that bill in the House, Bill 1813, I think it is. And, you know, each time they go to try to pass one of these things, if we can stop them, I know it's a small victory, but it's a very important one. You brushed upon earlier what's going to happen with Corazine, and I think that's going to fall into the background, because I believe that what they'll do is fine him, but it won't be a tough fine. And maybe even the company that's bankrupt will pay it. But there's a lot more of these coming down the line. And we got suits against JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. We have people getting caught in the commodity business, taking positions and putting them on hold by putting them in another company account. There's all sorts of terrible things going on in that industry. And I think a lot more of them are going to come to surface, and they're in the process of doing so now.
Yeah, that's what it telegraphs to me. Their reluctance to prosecute him is because they know they're all in the same position, and so they're setting the precedent to not pay people and to take folks' money. And that's what Max Kaiser says. That's what other guests we've had on confirm. I mean, I know you don't like to give us time frames on the meltdown, but it's pretty bad now. What signs should we look for?
Well, I think the bond market is the first place to look, and they have just been unsuccessful at taking the 10-year U.S. note down to a yield of 2.5%. It's I should say, the outside market, the long bonds, in that category. And I think what they're going to start doing again is a continuation of Operation Twist, which is aiding markets in one place and selling markets in another place. And it's coming to light, too, that they're taking direct orders from JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs. And I see that alluded to in much of the press throughout the world. And that's something really new. You know, like they're the bad guys and they're not really taking orders. They're taking orders from Wall Street.
Well said. Let's go to your phone calls. Nicole in Michigan, you're on the air.
Hi, Alex. Thanks so much for taking my call.
Thanks for calling.
I actually had a question about vaccines, but my husband is here with me, and he wanted to share an experience he had in the military with a vaccine.
Sure.
Hey, Jones, my name's John.
Sure. Go ahead.
Hey, I was medically discharged from the Air Force, pending a quote-unquote flu shot. Within an hour of having this thing, I was with an anaphylactic, what do you call that? Anaphylactic shock. And it lasted for over a couple years.
Yeah, you know, a lot of times they tell you they're shooting you up with one thing, and it's really another. You might have been shot up with a small amount of nerve gas, biological. You really have no idea. They use you in late-stage testing of weapon systems, you name it. You can look up Project Shad and other programs that have gone on right up into the 90s. That's the latest stuff we've seen declassified. And they actually kill U.S. troops routinely. U.S. troops are seen as expendable, basically like rhesus monkeys or rats. And I had one of Governor Perry's employees, who I've seen on television, it is one of his spokesmen, come to my Endgame event when I was showing the Endgame film. And he said, no, I was at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. I was a medic a decade ago. This is a decade from then. And he said that we were told to shoot them up with a flu shot, and they all died. And then we were told to scrub the whole thing out. So that's the type of stuff they do. I mean, was it a special shot, or did they line everybody up and give them the shots?
Well, check this out. We have routine flu shots on a yearly basis. And around that time, they were having the anthrax shot. And I told him, I said, I wasn't going to get it. And I told my chief, I said, I'm not taking this anthrax shot. And he said, you're going to be court-martialed and probably dishonorable discharge. I said, well, I'd rather have that than die.
So they just lied and said, here's the flu shot, and it was probably the anthrax. Because the anthrax did kill a bunch of people, and they had mutinies finally, as you know. It was in the newspapers, and the doctors said they wouldn't do it, so it stopped, because it was causing anaphylactic shock, heart attacks, death, autoimmune disorders. What year was this that this happened to you?
It was, what was it? It was around the year
2003.
2002, 2003. No, it was 2001 or 2002, I think.
Yeah, it was 2002, late 01, 02, when the government did the anthrax attacks, and it now admitted it was super U.S. grade, was mailed from Fort Detrick and all the rest of it, and they had a couple patsies that they tried to set up, and they finally killed one of them to make it stick. But, yeah, that was the first time they did it, and then they had to suspend it. Because the maker, admittedly had so many problems at their plant. It was it was killing so many people. But it wasn't a problem. They're just seeing if they can do this to you. Bob, you're a veteran yourself. I know you've studied all this. What do you think about what the globalists do to people? The little gift they give everybody that keeps giving.
Well, it was like, as I look back, I was lucky. I wasn't taken into some of those programs. They were mostly biological at that time. They had other kinds of programs. But, you never would think for a second that your own government would give you something that would kill you. And they are, and they have been, and evidently they'll continue to.
Well, they really love killing kids.
You people thinking of going in the military, you better think twice.
Well, that's the issue here, is that it's all on record. And it's not just military. It's foster kids. It's regular, kids just getting shots. And again, you're right. You never think the government would do that, this type of betrayal. But it's not the government. It's the banker eugenics crime syndicate that now has reached critical mass and has gotten its people in almost all the major power positions. That's why it's so refreshing to have a Ron Paul in Congress or a Senator Paul or a Walter Jones. But maybe 50 or so, Ron Paul, I agree with his number, in the House are good. 10 good senators, Rand said. When I talked to him today, the interview's coming up. I mean, that's scary. 50 or so members of the House, 10 senators. All the rest are wanton scum.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Folks, I want to explain something. The guys Google everything I'm saying in there or start page it, they search it. They just showed all the Chad documents on TV if you're watching. I'm not making this up. I can pull up AP, BBC, and it'll say, yes, in thousands of tests on ships, they sprayed chemical, biological, radiological. But then if you read deeper and then get into the Department of Energy and other documents, folks, they would kill people. The media tells you about people they sprayed that, you know, get tumors and die 10, 20 years later. In many cases, they go, all right, you guys show up. We're picking Johnson, Brown, Horowitz, Sanchez. This Saturday, your leave's canceled. Because I've read the records. I've had some of the survivors on of some of the tests that weren't as lethal. And then they just march them in, nerve gas them, and they've got these special doctors who then package them. They always send everybody else off on leave. They kill them, and then they dissect their bodies, and then they tell their family they died of flu. I mean, the magnitude of this evil. But it's the globalist testing cadres of doctors that will march a young private in and murder them. Murder them. I mean, this is who runs our government, Bob.
Absolutely. And it's been going for a long time. And, you know, I contend that the only way we're going to take this thing down, other than through Congress, is to have the financial system self-destruct. And when that happens, they lose their control. And that's the only way I can see getting to them.